The car ride home was a blur, the scent of hospital bleach still clinging to my clothes, a weirdly comforting smell after days in that sterile environment. My name is Whitney, by the way, and cradled in my arms was Angelo, my son, all 7 pounds of perfect sleepy newness. Damon, my husband, drove, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. He hadn't said much since we left, just a tight smile here and there. I figured he was just as overwhelmed as I was. New parent jitters, right? He pulled into the driveway of our house, our home, the place we'd painted, decorated, and dreamed of bringing our baby back to. "We're here," he murmured, finally looking at me, though his gaze skittered away quickly. "Let me get Angelo," I said, my voice thick with emotion. This was it. The start of our new life. Damon fumbled with the door, then rushed to my side to help me out. "Careful, careful," he said, his hand hovering near my arm, but not quite touching. Odd. Inside, the house felt different. Colder somehow. And then I smelled it. Not the familiar scent of our home, or even the lingering aroma of the lemon cleaner I loved. It was a cloying, sickly sweet perfume, so strong it made my stomach churn. It was coming from upstairs, from the nursery. "Damon, what's that smell?" I asked, my steps faltering on the stairs. Angelo stirred in my arms, his tiny face scrunching. "Oh, just freshener," he said too quickly. He practically herded me up the stairs. "You must be exhausted. Let's get Angelo settled." My heart began to thud a nervous rhythm against my ribs. He pushed open the nursery door, and there she was. Sierra, Damon's assistant, standing by Angelo's brand new crib, a smug little smile on her perfectly made-up face, arranging a pile of blankets I didn't recognize. The source of the perfume. "Surprise!" Sierra chirped, her voice like nails on a chalkboard. "Thought I'd get things ready for the little man." I just stared. My mind went blank. Words wouldn't form. I clutched Angelo tighter. "Damon," I finally managed, my voice a shaky whisper. "What is she doing here?" Damon wouldn't meet my eyes. He shuffled his feet. "Whitney, honey, Sierra is just here to help. With the night feeds, you know? You're going to be so exhausted, and you need your rest to recover." "Help?" I echoed, feeling the blood drain from my face. "Help with what? I'm his mother. I can do the night feeds." Just then a shadow filled the doorway. Valeria, Damon's mother, glided in, her expression a mixture of pity and triumph. "Now, Whitney dear," she cooed, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "Don't get yourself worked up. Damon is just being thoughtful, and a real mother would be grateful for the support. A real mother." The words hit me like a slap. My hands started to shake, not just from fatigue, but from a rising tide of disbelief and fury. Tears welled in my eyes. Grateful? Grateful that my husband's assistant is in my baby's nursery, planning to do my job? "See, Damon?" Valeria said, nodding sagely at him. "She's overwrought. It's the postpartum delirium, just like we talked about. Poor thing. She can't even see when people are trying to help her." "Postpartum delirium?" I choked out, looking from Valeria's smug face to Damon's averted one, and then to Sierra, who was now patting the crib mattress with a proprietary air. "Are you serious? I just had a baby. I'm tired. Yes, I'm emotional. But I'm not delirious." Damon finally spoke, his voice firm but cold. "Whitney, you're not well. You've been through a lot. Sierra is here to make sure Angelo is taken care of, and that you get the rest you desperately need. It's all arranged." "Arranged?" My voice cracked. They were looking at me like I was a broken toy. Something to be managed, then discarded. The way Sierra was already making herself at home. The way Valeria was nodding in agreement with every dismissive word Damon uttered. It was a performance, and I was the unsuspecting audience. No, not the audience. I was the one being written out of the script. They wanted to replace me. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. My tears were real, my shaking hands were real, but the reason for them was a betrayal so profound it stole my breath. They were using my exhaustion, my vulnerability, against me. I need to sit down, I mumbled, feeling my knees buckle. Of course, dear, Valeria said, guiding me out of the nursery, away from my son. You go rest. We'll take care of everything. Sierra shot me a look over Valeria's shoulder, a look of pure, unadulterated victory. As Valeria settled me on the living room sofa, fussing with a blanket, I looked down at Angelo, who had miraculously slept through most of it. His tiny, perfect face. My son. A cold, hard knot began to form in my stomach, a core of ice beneath the swirling chaos of pain and shock. They thought I was broken. They thought I was weak, delirious, easily pushed aside. They were wrong. Later that evening, after I'd been persuaded to take a mild sedative, which I palmed and later flushed, I lay in my bed, the door slightly ajar. My body ached. My heart felt like a shattered piece of glass, but my mind was surprisingly clear. I heard them downstairs, their voices low. Valeria and Damon. She's already halfway gone, Valeria whispered, her voice carrying clearly in the quiet house. A few more weeks of this, a few more episodes, and the judge will see it our way. Sierra is so much more stable, so much better for Angelo. My breath caught. A judge? They were already planning that far ahead. My delirium, their carefully constructed narrative, had to be utterly convincing. If they wanted a madwoman, I'd give them one they'd never forget. And then I'd make them pay. Every last one of them. The next morning, my performance began. When Sierra brought Angelo to me for his morning feed, her smile was saccharine. "Did you have a good rest, Whitney?" she asked, her voice dripping with false concern. I blinked at her, letting my eyes wander vaguely around the room. Rest? Who are you again? I asked, my voice deliberately weak and confused. Sierra's smile faltered for a split second before she plastered it back on. It's Sierra, Whitney. Damon's assistant? I'm here to help with Angelo. Oh, I said, then started to cry. Big gulping sobs. My baby. They're trying to take my baby. Valeria appeared in the doorway almost instantly, like a vulture circling. Now, dear. No one is taking your baby. Sierra is just helping. You had a bad night, remember? You were very agitated. I was? I looked from Valeria to Sierra, my expression one of utter bewilderment. I don't remember. I clutched Angelo a little too tightly, making him fuss. See? Valeria said to Sierra, a knowing glance passing between them. She's not herself. To me, she said, why don't you let Sierra take Angelo for a bit? You look like you need more sleep. I let them persuade me. As Sierra carried Angelo out, her perfume trailing behind her, I saw Damon watching from the hallway. He gave Sierra a small, almost imperceptible nod. They thought I was crumbling. Perfect. Days melted into a surreal play. I'd forget where I put things. My phone, my glasses, a half-eaten sandwich. I'd burst into tears at the dinner table for no apparent reason, then stare blankly when they asked what was wrong. I'd accuse Damon of whispering about me with Sierra, then apologize profusely for being so paranoid. You're just tired, honey, Damon would say, patting my hand with a distinct lack of warmth. It's the hormones. And the delirium, Valeria would add, always nearby, always watching. Her smugness was a physical presence in the house, a constant suffocating weight. They grew bolder. Damon and Sierra started working late in his home office, the door closed, soft laughter sometimes drifting out. One afternoon, I wandered downstairs, feigning disorientation, and saw them on the sofa, his arm around her, her head on his shoulder. They sprang apart when they saw me, Damon's face flushing. "Whitney, you should be resting," he snapped, his voice sharper than usual. I thought I heard Angelo cry," I stammered, backing away. "I'm sorry." Their pitying glances followed me up the stairs. The baby monitor became my lifeline. I'd insisted on having it, telling them I needed to hear Angelo even when he was with Sierra. "It makes me feel less anxious," I'd said, with a carefully crafted tremor in my voice. They'd exchanged one of their looks. "See, she's anxious, unstable," and agreed. The microphone was surprisingly sensitive. I'd lie in bed, pretending to sleep, and listen. "She had another episode today," I heard Damon tell Valeria one evening. "Accused me of trying to poison her tea because it tasted funny. It was just a new herbal blend I'd forgotten I'd bought." "The doctor said these things can escalate," Valeria replied, her voice smooth. "We just need to be patient and document everything. Sierra, dear, you're doing wonderfully with Angelo. He's so calm with you, a natural mother." "Thank you, Valeria," Sierra's voice sickeningly sweet. "I just want what's best for him." Each word was a drop of acid, but each word also went into my new secret weapon, a digital diary on a cheap burner tablet I'd hidden under my mattress. I'd bought it weeks before Angelo was born, a nagging premonition I couldn't shake now proving terrifyingly accurate. Under the guise of journaling my feelings, for a non-existent therapist, I'd told them I was too overwhelmed to actually call yet. I meticulously documented everything. Dates, times, quotes, their actions, their condescending remarks. Every slight, every lie, every piece of evidence of their affair and their gaslighting. The file was password protected with a phrase only I would know. Angelo's Avenger. One evening, Damon came in to check on me. He'd been out. A quick drink with a client, he'd said. He smelled faintly of Sierra's cloying perfume. He tossed his jacket onto the chair. "How are you feeling, Whitney?" he asked, his tone carefully neutral. "Tired," I mumbled, turning my face to the pillow. "Just so tired." He left without another word. After a few minutes, I crept out of bed. His jacket. Something made me reach into the pockets. Keys, wallet, loose change, and a receipt. A flimsy piece of paper from an expensive lingerie store downtown. I unfolded it. Lace bra, matching thong, silk robe. Definitely not my size, and definitely not something a helpful assistant would be receiving from her boss. A cold smile touched my lips. The game was well and truly afoot, and they had no idea I was already several moves ahead. My delirium became a useful cloak for nocturnal explorations. "I get so restless," I'd tell Valeria with a sigh if she found me wandering the hallways at 2 a.m. "I can't seem to settle." She'd just pat my arm, her eyes gleaming with satisfaction at my continued decline, and steer me back towards my room. One such night, drawn by an instinct I couldn't ignore, I drifted toward the nursery. The door was slightly ajar. Peeking in, I saw Sierra asleep in the rocking chair, Angelo asleep in his crib. That wasn't the surprise. The surprise was the small suitcase tucked beside the changing table, a few brightly colored tops spilling out. I pushed the door open a fraction more. Her toiletries were lined up on the small shelf above the sink in the nursery's ensuite bathroom. A bathroom I, Sam, had meticulously planned for my baby. My toothbrush holder was gone, replaced by hers. She hadn't just moved into the nursery. She'd colonized it. Damon's work dinners with Sierra became more frequent, stretching later and later into the night. "Big project. Lots to finalize," he'd say breezily if I dared to ask, my voice laced with the paranoid edge they'd come to expect. "But you smell like her perfume, Damon," I'd whisper, tears welling on cue. "Whitney, don't start," he'd snap, his patience wearing thin, which was exactly what I wanted. "You're imagining things. Sierra's a colleague. That's it. But the late nights, we're working. What part of that don't you understand? He'd sigh dramatically. Honestly, this is exhausting. I'm trying to provide for my family, and all I get is suspicion. His dismissals, his increasingly flimsy excuses, were all dutifully recorded on the voice memo app on my burner phone, which I kept tucked into the waistband of my pajamas. I'd accidentally leave it recording during our conversations. The audio quality wasn't perfect, but his contempt and my feigned confusion came through loud and clear. One evening, Valeria offered me my nighttime tea. "This will help you sleep, dear," she said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "You've been so on edge." I took the cup, my hand trembling convincingly. "Thank you, Valeria. You're so kind to me." As she turned away, I pretended to take a sip, then carefully palmed the small white pill I'd seen her subtly drop into the steaming liquid when she thought I wasn't looking. Later, I flushed it. That night, I feigned deep, untroubled sleep, my breathing even, my body still. The house was quiet. Too quiet. I slipped out of bed, my bare feet silent on the carpeted hallway. Their voices, low and conspiratorial, drifted up from the kitchen. Valeria and Sierra. "He's finally realizing how much better you are for him, for Angelo," Valeria was saying, her voice laced with smug satisfaction. "It was always meant to be this way. Your family, dear. Blood is thicker than water, and certainly thicker than whatever temporary infatuation he had with her." Sierra murmured something I couldn't quite catch, but Valeria's next words were chillingly clear. "Don't you worry your pretty little head about Whitney. She's practically a ghost already. Another few weeks, and Damon will be free to have the life he deserves, with a woman who truly understands him, and a mother for Angelo, who isn't broken." Family? Sierra was family? My mind raced. How? The opportunity came a few days later. Valeria was in the garden, supervising a landscaper Damon had hired to tidy things up. Her iPad lay on the kitchen counter, unlocked. She was always so careless, so confident in her control. My heart hammered against my ribs. I glanced around. Damon was supposedly on a conference call in his office. Sierra was napping with Angelo. My fingers flew across the screen, opening her email. I searched for Sierra's name. My breath hitched. There it was. An email chain, not with Sierra, but with a woman named Carol, Sierra's mother. The dates went back nearly a year, before Angelo was even conceived. "Sierra is the perfect choice, Cynthia," Carol had written to Valeria, Valeria's first name, which I rarely heard. "She's smart, ambitious, and she's always adored Damon from afar, you know, being a distant cousin and all. This is her chance, and ours, to see her settled with a good man, and for Damon to finally have the family he deserves, away from that unstable influence." Valeria's reply. "Indeed, it's taken some maneuvering, but Whitney's pregnancy provided the perfect opportunity to introduce Sierra into the household. Once the baby arrives, Whitney's condition will make the transition much smoother. Damon is already seeing how much more capable Sierra is. Distant cousin. Handpicked. This wasn't just an affair Damon had stumbled into. This was a calculated long con, a dynastic takeover orchestrated by Valeria, with Sierra and her mother as willing accomplices. They hadn't just seized an opportunity, they had created it. My postpartum delirium wasn't just a convenient excuse. It was a planned-for part of their strategy. The cold fury that had been simmering inside me ignited into a raging inferno. They wouldn't just be exposed. They would be annihilated. The emails burned into my brain. Sierra wasn't just some opportunistic homewrecker. She was a pre-selected replacement, a pawn in Valeria's twisted game of family chess. My resolve, already hardening, now felt like tempered steel. But the sheer scale of their deception, the calculated cruelty of it all, made me realize I couldn't dismantle this fortress of lies on my own. A few days later, I feigned a particularly bad episode. I forgot how to use the coffee machine, then burst into tears when Damon tried to help, accusing him of treating me like an idiot. I think I need to see Dr. Evans, I sobbed, naming my OB-GYN. Maybe she can help me. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Valeria and Damon exchanged a quick, triumphant glance. Of course, dear, Valeria said smoothly. That's a very good idea. But you're in no state to drive. Perhaps your sister could take you? Rachel always did have a calming effect on you. Perfect. That was exactly what I'd hoped they'd suggest. Yes, I whispered. Rachel, can you call her? I don't think I can. I let my voice trail off, my hand fluttering weakly. My sister Rachel arrived an hour later, her face etched with concern as Damon and Valeria gave her a heavily edited version of my condition. She's just been so fragile since Angelo was born, Damon said, shaking his head sadly. We're terribly worried. In the car, once we were safely away from the house, the dam broke. Rachel, they're trying to take Angelo from me, I choked out, the words tumbling over each other as I relayed the whole nightmarish story. Sierra, the delirium, Valeria's plotting, the emails. Rachel listened, her knuckles white on the steering wheel, her expression shifting from confusion to disbelief, then to cold, hard anger. That witch, she seethed, referring to Valeria. And Damon, how could he? Whitney, this is insane. I know, I said, wiping my eyes. They think I'm falling apart. They think they're winning. But I have evidence, Rach. So much evidence. What are you going to do? I'm going to fight, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. But I need help. Real help. Rachel didn't hesitate. I know someone, she said, her jaw set. A lawyer, Lee Knight. She's a shark, Whitney. The best family lawyer in the city. She helped my friend Sarah through a nightmare divorce. If anyone can help you, Lee can. The next day, under the guise of a follow-up appointment that Rachel insisted I needed for my nerves, I met Lee. Her office was sleek and modern, and Lee herself was sharp, impeccably dressed, with eyes that missed nothing. I poured out my story again, this time with the printouts of the emails, the audio files on a USB stick, and my meticulously kept digital diary. Lee listened intently, her expression unreadable. When I finally finished, she leaned back in her chair. Whitney, she said, her voice calm but firm, what they are doing is unconscionable. This isn't just gaslighting, it's constructive abandonment, emotional abuse, and potentially conspiracy to defraud you of your parental rights. Their postpartum delirium diagnosis is a self-serving fabrication. A wave of relief so profound it almost buckled my knees washed over me. Someone believed me. Someone saw it. So, what do? I asked, my voice hoarse. We fight, Lee said, a ghost of a smile playing on her lips, and we use their arrogance against them. You continue to play the part they've cast for you. Let them think they have you exactly where they want you. Meanwhile, we gather every shred of evidence, meticulously, quietly. We build an irrefutable case. Back at the house, the pressure cooker environment intensified. Damon and Valeria started gently suggesting I sign some papers. Just temporary, Whitney, Damon explained, his arm around Sierra, who stood silently by. Giving me full medical decision-making authority for Angelo. Just until you're feeling stronger. It's for his protection. In case, He tapped his head meaningfully. And we've been thinking, Valeria chimed in, her voice like silk. This house holds so many difficult memories for you now. Perhaps a fresh start would be good. Damon found a lovely smaller place, much easier for him and Sierra to manage with the baby. They were openly discussing selling our home, my home, and moving on without me. right in front of me. My delirious act was my shield. I just nodded vaguely, tears streaming. "Whatever you think is best, Damon," I mumbled. A few days later, my personal phone, the one they knew about, disappeared. "Oh, Whitney," Damon said, with an exaggerated sigh of exasperation when I frantically searched for it. "You've probably just misplaced it again in your confusion. Don't worry about it. You don't really need it right now, do you? It's just another thing to stress you out." He had no idea about the burner phone, safely tucked away. He had no idea that every photo, every recording, every damning entry in my diary was already backed up to a secure cloud server, the password known only to me and Lee Knight. Let him think he'd cut off my communication. He was only tightening the noose around his own neck. Lee's next piece of advice was blunt. "Follow the money, Whitney." Men like Damon, especially when guided by someone like Valeria, rarely plan an exit strategy that doesn't involve securing their financial future, usually at their spouse's expense. So, one afternoon, while Damon was at a crucial client meeting, which I suspected was a leisurely lunch with Sierra, and Valeria was running errands, likely scouting new neighborhoods for Damon and his new family, I feigned a muddled attempt to understand our bills. "Damon handles all of that, dear," Sierra said, bouncing Angelo on her hip when I wandered into the kitchen looking confused. "You don't need to worry your pretty little head about it." The condescension was thick enough to spread on toast. "But I want to see," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "Sometimes I forget what we spend money on." I let a tear escape. "It makes me anxious." Sierra sighed, a put-upon expression crossing her face. "Fine. His laptop is in the study. But don't mess anything up, okay? He gets really agitated when his files are disorganized." "Okay," I whispered, shuffling towards the study. Damon's laptop was, of course, password protected. But I knew his passwords. Or rather, I knew his patterns. His mother's birthday, his old football jersey number, the name of his first dog. It took me 3 tries. Bingo. What I found made my blood run cold. It wasn't just about replacing me as a wife and mother. It was about leaving me with nothing. He'd been systematically draining our joint savings account for months, transferring large sums into a newly opened account. An account under 2 names, Damon and Sierra. Business statements showed diverted profits, invoices fudged, all painting a picture of a man methodically stripping away every financial safety net I thought we had. He was building a new life on the ashes of ours, and planning to leave me destitute in the wreckage. The sheer audacity of it, the cold, calculated betrayal, took my breath away. This went far beyond a simple affair. This was grand larceny, disguised as a midlife crisis. I meticulously photographed every incriminating statement, every transfer slip, every doctored invoice with my burner phone, the quiet clicks of the camera shutter sounding like gunshots in the silent house. As I was closing down the files, a flicker of movement outside the study door caught my eye. Sierra. She was standing there, watching me, her expression unreadable. Had she heard the clicking? "Just trying to understand," I stammered, quickly closing the laptop, my heart pounding. She didn't say anything for a moment, just looked at me, then at the laptop, then back at me. Then a strange thing happened. A flicker of something. Was it doubt? Fear? Crossed her face. "Valeria's on her way back," she said, her voice flat, devoid of its usual saccharine sweetness. "You should probably go back to your room." She turned and walked away without another word. It was a small thing, but it planted a seed. Sierra had seemed less triumphant lately, less smug. I'd caught her arguing quietly with Damon a few times, her voice sharp, his placating. Once, I saw Valeria give Sierra a curt command about Angelo's feeding schedule, and Sierra's face had tightened, a brief flash of resentment in her eyes before she smoothed it over with a compliant, "Yes, Valeria." Perhaps the golden cage Valeria had built for her was starting to feel a little too restrictive. Perhaps she was realizing she wasn't a cherished partner in this scheme, but just another, more pliable pawn. It was a sliver of a possibility, but one I filed away. The true depth of their depravity, however, was yet to be fully revealed. A few days later, driven by a chilling premonition, I delved deeper into Damon's laptop. I wasn't even sure what I was looking for, just a feeling, a cold dread. I found it buried in a nested series of folders, innocuously labeled contingency plans. It wasn't just about custody. It wasn't just about money. It was about my freedom. The folder contained a detailed plan to have me involuntarily committed to a private psychiatric facility. There were scanned doctor's notes, clearly fabricated, detailing my supposed rapidly deteriorating mental state. There were draft affidavits from concerned friends, names I vaguely recognized as Valeria's sycophantic bridge club members, attesting to my erratic behavior and delusional episodes. They were planning to use the court's declaration of my unfitness not just to gain custody of Angelo, but to lock me away, to silence me completely. I stared at the screen, the words blurring. This wasn't just a messy divorce. This was a plot to utterly destroy me, to erase me from my own life, from my son's life. The air in the room felt thick, suffocating. They wouldn't just take my son. They would take my sanity, my liberty, my very identity. The game had just escalated to a terrifying new level, and my madness had to be more convincing than ever. The official-looking envelope arrived by courier. Damon intercepted it at the door, his expression carefully neutral as he signed. He brought it into the living room, where I was listlessly staring out the window, Angelo asleep in the bassinet beside me. Valeria and Sierra were there too, a united front of false sympathy. "Whitney," Damon began, his voice gentle, the kind one uses with a frightened animal or a very small child. "There's something we need to discuss." He held out the envelope. I looked at it, then at him, my eyes wide and confused. What is it?" "It's from our lawyer, dear," Valeria said, stepping forward. "It's about Angelo." Sierra shifted uncomfortably, her gaze fixed on a point just past my shoulder. She looked pale. Damon opened the envelope and took out the documents. "Whitney, we've had to make a very difficult decision," he said, his voice laced with feigned sorrow. "For Angelo's sake, and for yours, really." He laid the papers on the coffee table. Summons, petition for full custody, affidavits. My name, my severe postpartum psychosis, my inability to care for myself or the child, all spelled out in cold legal jargon. "We're filing for full custody of Angelo," Damon stated, his eyes for once meeting mine directly. They were cold, devoid of any emotion save for a chilling resolve. "You need professional help, Whitney. Serious help. You're not well enough to look after him." This was it. The moment they'd been working towards. The culmination of their gaslighting, their manipulation. I stared at the papers, then at their faces. Damon, the picture of a heartbroken husband forced to make an impossible choice. Valeria, radiating smug triumph disguised as concern. Sierra, looking like she might be sick, but standing her ground beside Damon. Then, I gave them the performance of a lifetime. My breath hitched. A low moan escaped my lips. My eyes filled with tears. Real ones this time, fueled by a potent cocktail of rage and adrenaline. I snatched up the papers, my hands shaking violently. No, you can't," I shrieked, the sound raw and desperate. "He's my baby. You can't take him from me." I jumped up, stumbling, clutching the papers to my chest. "You're lying. I'm fine. I'm his mother." I backed away from them, my eyes wild. "You're trying to trick me. You're all against me." "Whitney, calm down," Damon said, taking a step towards me, his hands outstretched placatingly. Stay away from me, I screamed, shrinking back. I let the papers scatter to the floor. You hate me. You all hate me. I sank to my knees, dissolving into racking hysterical sobs, rocking back and forth. My baby, my baby, my baby. Valeria exchanged a significant look with Damon. See? Her expression clearly said. She's completely unhinged. They let me cry for a while. Then Valeria gently helped me to my room, clucking about how this was all too much for my fragile state. They were so confident, so sure they had won. Little did they know, Lee Knight had already filed our counter-petition that very morning. A petition loaded with every piece of evidence I had painstakingly gathered. Audio recordings, financial statements, copies of Valeria's emails, screenshots of the contingency plan to have me committed. It was a mountain of their deceit, ready to avalanche down on them. The days leading up to the hearing were a blur. Outwardly, I was a wreck, barely eating, prone to sudden weeping fits, forgetting conversations moments after they happened. Inwardly, I was a coiled spring of anticipation. Lee and I had several quiet, intense strategy sessions via burner phone calls when I was napping or too distressed to leave my room. We went over every detail, every piece of evidence, ensuring it was irrefutable, undeniable. They're going to paint you as completely unstable, Lee warned. You need to be prepared for that. Their entire case rests on it. Let them, I'd said, my voice cold. The crazier they make me sound, the harder they'll fall when the truth comes out. I spent hours just looking at Angelo, sleeping peacefully in his crib, oblivious to the storm raging around him. His tiny, perfect face, his little sighs, the way his fingers curled around mine. He was my anchor, my reason, my strength. For him, I would walk through fire. For him, I would become the monster they thought I was, then turn that monstrosity back on them tenfold. The night before the hearing, I was helping Valeria clear the dinner dishes, my movements slow and clumsy. She was humming, a self-satisfied little tune. Damon promised me, I said, my voice barely a whisper, my eyes downcast, as if sharing a precious secret hope. He promised we'd always be a family. Me, him, and Angelo. Valeria stopped humming. She turned, a look of pity mixed with utter disdain on her face. Then she laughed. A short, sharp, dismissive sound. Oh, Whitney, she said, shaking her head. You poor, delusional girl. That laugh. That single arrogant sound. It was the last piece of fuel my fire needed. Tomorrow, they would learn just what a delusional girl was truly capable of. Tomorrow the show would end, and the reckoning would begin. The courtroom was cold, impersonal. Damon, Valeria, and Sierra sat at one table with their lawyer, a slick, confident man who oozed condescension. I sat with Lee at another, my hands clasped tightly in my lap. I looked small, fragile, exactly as planned. Their lawyer, Mr. Davies, went first. He painted a devastating picture. Your Honor, we are here today because Whitney, tragically, is suffering from a severe case of postpartum psychosis. She is a danger to herself, and more importantly, to her infant son, Angelo. He presented his evidence, my erratic text to Damon, carefully selected and stripped of all context. She accuses my client of infidelity one moment, then begs for his forgiveness the next, Davies intoned gravely. Witness statements from Valeria's friends, detailing my public outbursts and confused ramblings, all lies or gross exaggerations of my carefully staged performances. He even produced photographs, ones Damon must have taken when I was at my most exhausted, my hair unkempt, dark circles under my eyes, making me look disheveled and lost. Is this the face of a competent mother, Your Honor? Sierra took the stand, her voice trembling. She dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. I didn't want to believe it at first, she sniffled. But Whitney, she became so unstable. She'd forget things, accuse us of terrible things. I was just trying to help with Angelo, but she saw me as a threat. I'm so worried about him. He needs a calm, stable environment. She shot a look of pure, feigned anguish towards Damon. Damon testified next, the picture of a heartbroken, responsible husband. I love my wife, Your Honor, he said, his voice thick with emotion. But I love my son more. And she's not the woman I married. Not anymore. This is the hardest thing I've ever had to do, but I have to protect Angelo. I watched them, my expression carefully blank, occasionally letting a tear trace a path down my cheek. They were good. I had to give them that. Their narrative was seamless, convincing. I saw the judge, a stern-faced woman in her 50s, looking at me with a mixture of pity and concern. Then, it was Lee's turn. She rose, calm and composed. Your Honor, she began, her voice clear and steady, what you have just heard is a meticulously crafted fiction, designed to defraud my client of her child, her home, and her sanity. We will now present the truth. One by one, Lee dismantled their lies. She played the audio recordings, Damon's dismissive, gaslighting responses to my paranoid questions, Valeria and Sierra's hushed kitchen conversation about me being a ghost already, and Sierra being family. The courtroom was silent, save for the damning words echoing from the speakers. Damon's face paled. Valeria shifted uneasily. Lee presented the transcripts of my digital diary, detailing every instance of their cruelty, every condescending remark, every calculated move to undermine me. She showed the financial records, the drained joint accounts, the new account in Damon and Sierra's names, the diverted business funds. This isn't just about custody, Your Honor, Lee stated. It's about greed and a premeditated plan to leave Ms. Hayes destitute. She then projected the email chain between Valeria and Sierra's mother onto the large screen. The dynastic takeover, as I'd come to call it, laid bare for all to see. Sierra, the distant cousin, the perfect choice, to replace the unstable influence. Sierra stared at the screen, her face ashen, then buried her face in her hands, genuine sobs racking her body this time. Valeria looked like she'd been slapped. But Lee had saved the best for last. Your Honor, Lee said, her voice dropping slightly, drawing everyone's attention. My client, fearing for her safety and suspecting she was being manipulated in ways she couldn't yet prove, took certain precautions. This included installing a discreet security camera in her living room. A collective gasp went through the small public gallery. Damon's jaw literally dropped. Valeria went a ghastly shade of gray. We have footage from several occasions, Lee continued, but one in particular is most illuminating. The video played. The living room. Me, looking tired, accepting a cup of tea from Valeria. And then, clear as day, Valeria, her back mostly to the camera but her actions unmistakable, glancing around before quickly, furtively, crushing a small white pill and stirring it into my teacup before handing it to me. Her voice, captured by the camera's microphone, was chillingly clear as she later said to Damon, who had just entered the room, "This will help her rest and make our case stronger. The more confused she is, the better." The courtroom erupted. Shouts of, "Oh my God!" and "Did you see that?" Damon stared at the screen, then at his mother, his face a mask of disbelief and horror. Valeria looked like she was about to faint. Sierra was openly weeping, no longer acting. The judge banged her gavel. "Order! Order in the court!" Her face was a thundercloud. She looked at the screen, then at Valeria, her eyes like chips of ice. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by Sierra's choked sobs. After a long, tense moment, the judge spoke, her voice dangerously quiet. "We will take a brief recess. Officer," she said, gesturing to the bailiff, "I want you to remain with Mrs. Willis. Mrs. Willis," she addressed Valeria directly, her voice like frozen steel. When we reconvene, we will be discussing more than just custody. We will be discussing potential charges of assault and endangerment. The recess felt like an eternity, but when the judge returned, her expression was resolute. The rest of the hearing was a formality. Mr. Davies, Damon's slick lawyer, looked like he'd been run over by a truck, his earlier confidence completely gone. He offered a few feeble attempts at damage control, but it was like trying to plug a dam with a teacup. The judge's ruling was swift and decisive. Sole legal and physical custody of the minor child, Angelo, is awarded to his mother, Whitney, she declared, her voice ringing with authority. A permanent restraining order is hereby issued against Damon and Valeria, prohibiting any contact with Whitney or Angelo. My breath hitched. I'd won. Angelo was safe. He was mine. But the judge wasn't finished. Regarding the evidence of financial malfeasance, she continued, her gaze fixing on Damon, this court will be forwarding all pertinent documents to the district attorney's office for investigation into fraud and embezzlement. And Mrs. Willis, she said, turning her icy stare on Valeria, who was now flanked by the bailiff, you will be taken into custody immediately pending formal charges of assault with a dangerous substance and child endangerment. Your actions are an affront to decency and the law. Valeria let out a strangled cry as the bailiff gently but firmly took her arm. Damon just sat there, a broken man, staring blankly ahead as his world imploded. His career, built on an image of respectability, was in tatters. His reputation, annihilated in a public courtroom. Sierra, through her lawyer, quickly offered a plea. She broke down completely on the stand during a subsequent hearing, confessing how Valeria had manipulated her, playing on her familial connection and her ambition, promising her a life with Damon and Angelo. She admitted her role, but painted herself as another victim of Valeria's machinations. In exchange for her full testimony against both Damon and Valeria in their upcoming criminal trials, she received a lighter sentence, probation and community service. She vanished from our lives shortly after, a ghost of a different kind, hopefully to learn that shortcuts to happiness often lead to dead ends. The house, once my dream home, now felt tainted by their deceit. Lee, true to her shark-like reputation, ensured it was sold quickly, and the proceeds, along with a hefty settlement from Damon that accounted for the stolen funds and emotional distress, were placed firmly in my name. Angelo and I moved, not to a grand mansion, but to a bright, airy apartment in a new neighborhood, filled with sunlight and the scent of fresh paint, not cloying perfume. Rachel helped me decorate, her laughter echoing in the rooms, chasing away the last of the shadows. There are days, of course, when the phantom scent of Sierra's perfume drifts by on a breeze, or I hear an echo of Valeria's dismissive laugh in a stranger's voice. The betrayal was a deep wound, and scars remain. Sometimes, late at night, when Angelo is sleeping soundly, I sit by the window and look out at the city lights, and the sheer audacity of what they tried to do still makes my breath catch. They tried to erase me, to paint me as mad, to steal my child and my future. But then Angelo wakes, his little arms reaching for me, his gummy smile pure sunshine. I pick him up, his warm, solid weight a comfort against me, and I know, with every fiber of my being, that every tear, every feigned episode, every terrifying moment of my performance was worth it. My postpartum delirium, their weapon of choice against me, became my shield, my strategy, my path to liberation. The revenge was complete, not in a fiery, destructive way, but in the cold, hard light of justice. Damon faces financial ruin and likely jail time. Valeria, stripped of her societal standing and facing serious charges, will spend her twilight years paying for her cruelty. They didn't just lose. They were exposed for the hollow, manipulative people they truly were. It didn't magically heal all the wounds. Trust is a fragile thing, easily shattered, and mine took a beating. But justice brought a certain kind of peace, a quiet satisfaction in knowing their carefully constructed world had crumbled under the weight of their own lies. My story isn't really about forgiveness. Not yet, anyway. Maybe that will come with time. Maybe it won't. It's about survival. It's about a mother's love, fiercer and more cunning than any of them could have ever imagined. It's about ensuring that those who try to destroy you, who try to rewrite your narrative with their poison, face the full, unvarnished consequences of their actions. And sometimes, the best therapy isn't found in a doctor's office, but in a well-executed plan that brings the villains to their knees. They wanted a madwoman. I simply showed them what happens when you push one too far.